I am Ruth, 59 years old, retired school teacher from Portland. My son Thomas has always been my pride and joy, the center of my universe. Until that dinner when everything changed. The pain of hearing my own son call me a loser in front of my new husband Warren and his family cut deeper than any wound I had ever experienced. That moment destroyed our relationship in ways I never imagined possible. Before I share this painful journey, I would love to know where you are watching from. If you have ever experienced family betrayal, please hit that like and subscribe button. Your support means everything during these vulnerable moments of sharing. Life as a single mother was never the path I imagined. When Thomas was only 8, his father Patrick died suddenly of a heart attack, leaving me alone to raise our son. Those early years were a blur of grief and determination. I worked 2 jobs, teaching during the day and waitressing at night, just to keep our heads above water. There were countless nights I skipped meals, telling Thomas I had eaten earlier, just to ensure he never went hungry. Despite our financial struggles, I was determined Thomas would have every advantage. I scrimped and saved to send him to Westridge Academy, a private school known for its excellent education. When college applications came around, I liquidated my small retirement fund to pay his tuition at a prestigious university. For his 18th birthday, I surprised him with a car, not brand new, but reliable, purchased with money I had been setting aside for 5 years. All those years dating was never a priority. My focus remained singular, giving Thomas the best life possible. 20 years passed in the blink of an eye, with my social life consisting mainly of parent-teacher conferences and Thomas's sporting events. I told myself I was content that Thomas's happiness was all I needed. Then 2 years ago, everything changed. I was 63 days into retirement when I joined the Evergreen Community Garden, seeking a hobby to fill my suddenly empty days. That's where I met Warren Fletcher. He was planting tomatoes in the plot next to mine, struggling with the seedlings. I offered some advice. Gardening had always been my stress relief during those difficult years, and we struck up a conversation. Warren was 61, a successful accountant with his own small firm, widowed 5 years prior. He had 2 grown daughters, Amy and Sarah, both married with children of their own. Unlike the few men I had briefly dated over the years, Warren never seemed intimidated by my close relationship with Thomas. He was patient, kind, and genuinely interested in my life. Our relationship blossomed slowly, like the vegetables in our adjacent garden plots. After a year of dating, Warren proposed during a sunset picnic in that same community garden. 8 months ago, we had a beautiful but modest wedding ceremony with just close family and friends. Thomas attended, of course, maintaining a polite demeanor toward Warren that I later realized masked underlying resentment. Around the time I met Warren, my health began causing concerns. Nothing major, just a minor heart condition that required medication and stress management. Warren was my rock during doctor appointments, researching heart-healthy recipes and making sure I took daily walks. His care and attention made me feel valued in ways I had forgotten were possible. Meanwhile, Thomas's life seemed to be going well on the surface. At 33, he had a good job as a marketing manager at a local firm. He lived in a nice apartment downtown, drove a newer model car, and frequently posted photos from restaurants and weekend trips on social media. However, there were troubling signs I tried to ignore. Every few months, Thomas would call with some financial emergency. Unexpected car repairs, a rent increase he couldn't handle, or medical bills from a minor procedure. Each time I dipped into my savings to help him, assuring Warren it was just temporary. Warren never criticized these bailouts directly, but I sometimes caught his concerned expression when I hung up from yet another SOS call from Thomas. In retrospect, I should have recognized the pattern, but maternal instinct is a powerful blinder. As my relationship with Warren deepened, Thomas's visits became less frequent. When he did come over, he would ask pointed questions about our finances, seemingly preoccupied with whether Warren had access to my accounts. I assured him everything was separate, though Warren had helped me organize my retirement planning. These conversations always left me feeling uneasy, but I chalked it up to Thomas being protective. Looking back, the signs were clear. My growing happiness with Warren directly correlated with Thomas's growing resentment. I was no longer exclusively focused on him, no longer available at a moment's notice to solve his problems. For the first time in 25 years, I was prioritizing my own happiness, and Thomas couldn't accept that reality. 6 months after our wedding, Warren suggested we host a special family dinner to celebrate our half-year anniversary. Nothing extravagant, just a nice meal with loved ones. Warren's daughters, Amy and Sarah, would attend with their husbands and children, and of course, Thomas was invited as the most important person in my life. The day of the dinner, Warren and I spent hours preparing. He made his famous pot roast while I baked my special apple pie. We set the dining table with the good china my mother had left me, and Warren placed fresh flowers as a centerpiece. Everything was perfect, and I felt a sense of contentment seeing our blended family come together. Amy and Sarah arrived first with their families, bearing gifts and warm hugs. They had welcomed me into their lives with open arms from the beginning. Their children called me Grandma Ruth, a title that brought tears to my eyes the first time I heard it. We were chatting in the living room when Thomas finally arrived 30 minutes late. I noticed immediately that something was off. Thomas's smile seemed forced, and he barely acknowledged Warren's daughters. When Warren greeted him with a friendly pat on the shoulder, Thomas stiffened visibly. Still, I was determined this would be a pleasant evening. I ushered everyone to the table, hoping good food would ease the tension. For a while, conversation flowed naturally. Sarah talked about her son's baseball team, Amy shared news of her recent promotion, and Warren asked thoughtful questions of everyone. Thomas remained quiet, picking at his food and checking his phone repeatedly under the table. When I asked about his work, he gave short-clipped responses that did little to include himself in the family dynamic. The trouble began when Sarah innocently asked about our retirement plans. Warren mentioned the financial advisor he had introduced me to, explaining how we had reorganized my teacher's pension to provide better returns. He was animated, clearly proud of helping secure my financial future. Thomas's fork clattered against his plate. I watched his jaw tighten and his face flush. Warren, not noticing the shift in Thomas's demeanor, continued explaining the investment strategy, mentioning a small vacation property we were considering for our golden years. That's when it happened. Thomas pushed his chair back, the legs screeching against the hardwood floor. Every eye at the table turned to him. "This is ridiculous," Thomas said, his voice rising with each word. "He has been here for 5 minutes, and suddenly he is controlling all your money, making decisions about your future." I felt my chest tighten. "Thomas, that is not what is happening. Warren is just helping me. Helping you." Thomas cut me off. "Is that what you call it? You know what I think? You are a loser, Mom. But your new husband is not. He knows exactly what he is doing." The table fell silent. Warren's grandchildren looked down at their plates, uncomfortable with the adult tension. Amy's husband cleared his throat. Sarah reached for her water glass, avoiding eye contact. Warren sat perfectly still, his expression carefully neutral despite the insult. I felt as though I had been slapped. The room seemed to spin around me as my son's words echoed in my head. "You are a loser." After everything I had sacrificed every night, I went hungry so he could eat every dollar I saved for his education instead of my retirement, every dream I put on hold to ensure his success. And this was how he saw me, a loser. Yet somehow I maintained my composure. I did not cry. I did not yell back. I did not say anything at all. Years of classroom management had taught me that reacting emotionally to provocation only escalates the situation. So I sat there, back straight face, impassive, while my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Warren gently placed his hand over mine on the table. "Thomas," he said quietly. I think you should apologize to your mother. Thomas pushed his chair back further. Of course you would say that. Perfect Warren with his perfect daughters and perfect life. You have no idea what we went through before you showed up. I know enough, Warren replied, his voice still calm. I know your mother is the furthest thing from a loser I have ever met. Thomas stood up abruptly. I am not hungry anymore. Enjoy your happy little family dinner. He stormed out without another word, the front door slamming behind him. In the silence that followed, Warren's 10-year-old grandson whispered, Is Uncle Thomas having a bad day, Grandpa? Warren nodded, squeezing my hand. Yes, buddy. Everyone has those sometimes. Somehow we made it through the remainder of the meal. Amy and Sarah helped clear the dishes, making pointed conversation about neutral topics. Their kindness only emphasized Thomas's cruelty. Before they left, both of Warren's daughters hugged me tightly, Sarah whispering, He did not mean it, Ruth. He is just adjusting. But I knew better. The words had been deliberate, calculated to wound. That night, after everyone left, I lay awake beside Warren, replaying the scene over and over. Warren pretended to sleep, but I felt his concerned gaze in the darkness. Neither of us mentioned what had happened. Some pains are too deep for immediate discussion. The morning after the dinner disaster, I went through the motions of daily life, like a sleepwalker. I made coffee, watered my plants, and sorted laundry, all while Thomas's words played on repeat in my mind. You are a loser, Mom. Each mental replay felt like another knife to my heart. Warren found me staring blankly at a half-folded towel around noon. Without a word, he guided me to the porch swing, his arm around my shoulders. Do you want to talk about it? He asked gently. The dam broke. Years of suppressed concerns about Thomas came pouring out. His financial irresponsibility despite his good salary. His increasing demands for help. The emotional manipulation whenever I hesitated to provide money. Warren listened without interruption, his expression growing more troubled. Ruth, he said finally, I have noticed these patterns since we started dating. Thomas has a sense of entitlement I have rarely seen in an adult. Are you saying I raised him badly? My voice cracked on the question. Warren shook his head firmly. You raised him with love and sacrifice, but sometimes our greatest strength as parents, our unconditional love, can unintentionally enable harmful behaviors. His words stung with truth. Had I been so desperate to compensate for Thomas's fatherless childhood that I had failed to teach him responsibility? My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. Hey, Mom, can you pick up my dry cleaning today? I will swing by to get it tomorrow. No apology, no acknowledgement of his behavior. Just another request, as if nothing had happened. I set the phone down without responding, surprising myself with this small act of rebellion. Warren noticed. You do not have to decide anything right now, he said. Just know that whatever boundaries you choose to set, I am here to support you. Boundaries. The word felt foreign in relation to my son. I had spent so many years without them responding to Thomas's every need that I wasn't sure I knew how to establish them now. The following day, I called my best friend Linda for coffee. We had been friends since our teaching days, and she knew Thomas from infancy. If anyone could offer perspective, it was her. Over steaming mugs at our favorite cafe, I recounted the dinner incident. Linda's expression shifted from shock to a knowing sadness. Honey, she said, reaching for my hand, I have watched you bend over backward for that boy his entire life. You have been his safety net for too long. What do you mean? Linda sighed. When was the last time Thomas asked how you were doing? When did he last help you with anything? The relationship goes one way, Ruth and has for years. Her words hit like a thunderbolt. I could not recall a recent instance where Thomas had shown genuine concern for my well-being. Even when I had been diagnosed with my heart condition, he had called only briefly, more preoccupied with a work deadline than his mother's health. I think, Linda continued carefully. Thomas sees you as a resource, not as a person with feelings and needs of your own. That night, my chest tightened painfully, the familiar warning sign of my heart condition flaring up. Warren found me on the bathroom floor, struggling to breathe, and calmly helped me take my medication. He sat with me until the episode passed, never once saying, "I told you so," about the stress Thomas was causing. As days passed without contact from Thomas except another text asking if I could loan him money for car repairs, I began writing a letter I never intended to send. I poured out decades of love sacrifice and now painful disappointment. The exercise was cathartic, helping me process emotions too complex for conversation. Warren found me crying over the letter one evening. He read it silently when I offered it to him, then held me while I sobbed. "He was my whole world," I whispered into Warren's shoulder. "I know," Warren replied, stroking my hair. "And that is the problem. You were never meant to be just his mother. You are Ruth, teacher, gardener, wife, friend. A whole person with your own dreams and needs." For the first time, I allowed myself to acknowledge the pain of feeling betrayed by the person I had sacrificed everything for. It wasn't just the cruel words at dinner. It was the years of taking without giving back, of expecting support, without offering any in return. I had enabled this behavior out of love, but it was time, finally, to love myself enough to change it. Exactly 1 week after the dinner incident, my phone rang. Thomas's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath before answering. "Mom, I need your help." Thomas's voice had the urgent tone I knew all too well. "I am in a real emergency situation here." "What is wrong?" I asked, already feeling the familiar pull to rescue him. "I got an eviction notice today, 3 months behind on rent, and the car is being repossessed tomorrow if I cannot make a payment. I need $14,000 to sort everything out." The amount shocked me. "Thomas, that is more than I have in my emergency fund." "What about your retirement account or that investment thing Warren set up for you? You could take some from there." The casual way he suggested disrupting my financial security made my skin crawl. Warren was reading nearby, pretending not to listen, but clearly concerned. Something shifted inside me, a tectonic plate of maternal instinct grinding against newfound self-respect. "What happened to the money from your bonus last month?" I asked, surprising myself with the question. Thomas paused. "Things have been tight. Look, can you help or not?" In that moment, decades of saying yes collapsed under the weight of that single question. "Can you help or not?" Not, "I am sorry for what I said." Not, "How are you feeling after I insulted you at dinner?" Just another demand phrased as if I had no choice. "No, Thomas, I cannot help this time." The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, "What did you just say?" I said no. "I love you, but I cannot keep rescuing you from financial problems. It is not helping either of us." "This is because of him, is not it." Thomas's voice rose. "Warren has turned you against me." "This has nothing to do with Warren. This is about us, about patterns that need to change." Thomas's tone shifted from angry to desperate. "Mom, you do not understand. If I lose my apartment, I will have nowhere to go. If they take my car, I cannot get to work." My heart ached at his distress, but I held firm. "There are solutions that do not involve me giving you money. You could negotiate a payment plan with your landlord. You could take public transportation until you save for car payments." "I cannot believe this," Thomas said, his voice breaking. "After everything I have been through, you are abandoning me when I need you most." What kind of mother does that? The emotional manipulation was so familiar, it almost worked. Almost. A mother who finally realizes that real help means letting you face consequences so you can grow. I said, my voice surprisingly steady. If you do not help me, do not expect me to forget it, Thomas threatened. This is a betrayal I will never forgive. Warren had set his book down, watching me with a mixture of concern and pride. I drew strength from his silent support. I am sorry you feel that way, I replied. I love you, Thomas. That has not changed, but my answer is still no. Thomas hung up without another word. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling simultaneously terrible and empowered. Warren moved to sit beside me, his arm around my shoulders. That was the hardest thing I have ever done, I whispered. It was also the bravest, Warren replied. And probably the first truly helpful thing you have done for Thomas in years. That night, Warren held me while I cried, mourning the relationship I had thought we had while coming to terms with the reality of what it had become. For the first time, I was choosing to love my son in a way that might actually help him grow, even if it felt terrible in the moment. 3 days after our phone conversation, Thomas showed up unannounced at our front door. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes rumpled as if he had slept in them. When Warren opened the door, Thomas pushed past him without acknowledgement. Mom, we need to talk, he demanded, finding me in the kitchen. Without him, he added, glaring at Warren. Warren raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. I will be in the garden if you need me, Ruth. No, I said firmly. Warren stays. We are a family now, and anything you need to say can be said to both of us. Thomas's face contorted with anger. Family? I am your family. This guy is just some retirement plan you married. Warren remained remarkably calm. Thomas, I understand you are upset, but I will not allow you to speak to your mother that way in our home. Our home? This was our house, first mine and Mom's. Thomas turned to me. Is this why you will not help me? Has he convinced you that your own son does not matter anymore? I took a deep breath, willing my heart to maintain its rhythm. Thomas, please sit down. Shouting will not solve anything. Surprisingly, he complied, dropping heavily onto a kitchen chair. Up close, I could see the dark circles under his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands. I need that money, Mom. He said, his voice quieter, but no less intense. Everything is falling apart. Tell me what is really going on, I said. The full truth this time. Thomas stared at the table, avoiding eye contact. After a long pause, he spoke. I have some gambling debts. Online poker. It started small just for fun, but then I tried to win back what I lost, and it snowballed. The confession hung in the air. Warren and I exchanged glances, pieces falling into place. The constant need for money, the evasiveness about his finances, the escalating amounts. How much do you owe in total? Warren asked, his accountant mind going straight to the numbers. Thomas laughed bitterly. More than you would be willing to give. Almost 40,000. I gasped. Thomas, that is more than my annual pension. I know, he snapped. Why do you think I am here? If you loved me, you would help me. Those words, if you loved me, hit like a physical blow. How many times had I compromised my own well-being, my financial security, my happiness, all in the name of loving Thomas? And still, it was never enough. Love is not an ATM. Thomas, I said quietly. Real love sometimes means making tough choices for someone's long-term good. I love you too much to keep enabling behaviors that are destroying your life. Thomas stood abruptly. So that is it. You choose him over your own son. Warren stepped forward. This is not about choosing sides, Thomas. This is about— Stay out of this, Thomas shouted. You have done enough damage already. Ever since you came along, everything has changed. She used to be there for me. She used to care. I still care, I insisted, fighting back tears. But I cannot give you money for gambling debts. What I can offer is help finding a counselor support for addiction. I am not an addict, Thomas interrupted. I just need help this one time, and then everything will be fine. I promise. The desperation in his voice broke my heart, but I recognized the pattern. This one time, just this once, I had heard those words so many times before. It is Warren or me, Mom, Thomas said, his voice suddenly cold. If you will not help me now when I really need you, then we are done. Forever. Warren started to protest, but I touched his arm to silence him. This was my battle to fight. I refuse to accept that ultimatum, Thomas. I will not choose between my husband and my son, because that is not what this is about. This is about helping you in ways that actually benefit you, not just temporarily fix a problem. Thomas stared at me for a long moment, as if seeing a stranger. I never want to see either of you again, he said finally, each word precise and cutting. Then he turned and walked out, slamming the door behind him. The moment he left, my knees buckled. Warren caught me, guiding me to the couch. The stress had triggered another episode with my heart, and I struggled to breathe through the pain in my chest. That night was the worst of my life. Worse than when Patrick died, worse than any struggle I had faced as a single mother. Those hardships had purpose, building a life for Thomas. But this pain felt pointless, destructive, a failure of everything I had worked for. The following day, while checking Facebook in a moment of weakness, I discovered Thomas had been posting about how I had abandoned him in his time of need. He claimed Warren had brainwashed me into cutting off my own son. Distant relatives and old friends were commenting with sympathy for him and disappointment in me. The public villainization was almost more than I could bear. Warren found me sobbing over my laptop and gently closed it. This is not healthy, he said firmly. Your blood pressure cannot take this stress. Let's call Dr. Matthews. My doctor was blunt during our appointment the next day. Ruth, your heart condition is being exacerbated by extreme emotional stress. If you don't get this under control, we're looking at potential hospitalization. The irony was bitter. In trying to save Thomas, I might literally damage my heart beyond repair. 2 weeks passed without a word from Thomas. I moved through life mechanically, teaching my garden club on Tuesdays, attending church on Sundays, preparing meals with Warren. But joy had seeped out of these activities, replaced by a constant, dull ache of loss. Then Janet, the mother of Thomas's college roommate, called me. We had remained friendly over the years, occasionally meeting for lunch when she visited Portland. Ruth, I thought you should know, Janet said hesitantly. I ran into Marcus yesterday, and he mentioned Thomas has been sleeping in his office. Apparently, the eviction went through. My stomach dropped. Despite everything, the image of my son without a home was unbearable. Did Marcus say how Thomas is doing otherwise? Not great, from what I gathered. He is showing up to work disheveled, sometimes late. Marcus is worried he might lose his job if things continue. After hanging up, I paced the living room, torn between maternal instinct and the boundaries I had fought so hard to establish. Warren found me there, worrying the edge of a throw pillow between my fingers. Thomas is homeless, I said, my voice breaking. He is sleeping at his office. Warren sat beside me, his face thoughtful. That's his rock bottom, Ruth. Everyone's path to change is different. But what he needs and what he wants are different things, Warren reminded me gently. What he needs is to face consequences and find his own solutions. What he wants is a quick fix that perpetuates the cycle. I knew Warren was right, but knowing didn't ease the pain. Every maternal instinct screamed to rescue my child from suffering. That afternoon, Thomas's sister-in-law, Megan, called. Thomas had been married briefly in his 20s to her sister, Heather, the marriage ending when Heather discovered Thomas had been hiding significant credit card debt. "How could you let Thomas end up on the street?" Megan demanded without preamble. "After everything you have done for him, his entire life, you choose now to cut him off." I took a deep breath. "Megan, there is more to the situation than you know. What I know is that Thomas has always been able to count on you, and suddenly, he cannot. He said it is because of your new husband." For the first time, I broke my silence about Thomas's financial history. I told Megan about the years of bailouts, the pattern of emergencies, and finally the gambling confession. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I had no idea," Megan finally said. "Heather always suspected there was a gambling problem, but Thomas denied it so convincingly." That evening, Warren and I sat on our back porch watching the sunset through the maple trees. "What if we offered Thomas help with financial counseling?" Warren suggested. "Not cash, but professional support for the gambling and financial management." The idea felt right, supportive without enabling. "I will call him tomorrow," I decided, feeling hopeful for the first time in weeks. But before I could make that call, Thomas's boss, Alan, phoned me. My stomach dropped when I saw his name on the caller ID. Alan and I had met at company picnics over the years, and he had always spoken highly of Thomas's work. "Ruth, I am afraid I have some difficult news," Alan began. "Thomas has been terminated. We discovered he had been diverting client payments to a personal account." The room spun around me. "What?" "It appears to have been going on for about 3 months. Given the amount involved, we have had to file a police report. I wanted you to hear it from me before it potentially becomes public." I thanked Alan numbly and hung up. Warren found me staring blankly at the wall phone still clutched in my hand. Through my shock, I explained what had happened. "Embezzlement," Warren said, his face grave. "That's a serious crime, Ruth." Before we could discuss further, my phone rang again. This time, it was Thomas calling from a number I didn't recognize. "Mom?" His voice was small, broken. "I really messed up. I am at the police station. They are saying I committed fraud." In that moment, he sounded like the 8-year-old boy who had just lost his father, scared, vulnerable, and desperately in need of his mother. "Tell me everything, Thomas," I said, putting the phone on speaker so Warren could hear. For the first time, Thomas broke down completely. Between sobs, he confessed to the full extent of his gambling addiction, how it had spiraled out of control over the past 2 years. He had maxed out credit cards, taken payday loans, and finally in desperation started diverting company funds, always telling himself he would win big and replace the money before anyone noticed. "I am sorry for what I said at dinner," he whispered. "You are not a loser. I am. I have lost everything. My home, my car, my job, and now I might lose my freedom too." I closed my eyes, absorbing the pain and regret in his voice. "I am coming to see you," I said. "We will figure this out together." Warren drove me to the police station in silence, his presence a steady comfort. As we pulled into the parking lot, he squeezed my hand. "Remember, helping does not always mean fixing. Sometimes it means standing by someone while they face the consequences of their choices." Thomas looked terrible when they brought him to the visitor area, unshaven eyes, red-rimmed, wearing the same clothes from days earlier. When he saw me, he broke down again. "I am sorry," he repeated over and over. "I am so sorry for everything." Through tears, we had the most honest conversation we had ever had. Thomas admitted he had resented Warren from the beginning, not because of anything Warren had done, but because he represented a change in our dynamic. Warren was the first person who had drawn my focus away from Thomas, the first person I had prioritized alongside my son. "I was jealous," Thomas admitted. "Dad has been gone so long, but seeing you with someone else made me feel like I was losing him all over again. Like I was losing you too." "Oh, Thomas," I said, reaching across the table to take his trembling hand. "Love does not work that way. My heart is big enough for both of you. It always has been." He nodded, wiping his eyes. "I know that now. And Warren seems like a good guy. I was awful to him." "Warren understands family is complicated," I assured him. "What matters now is getting you the help you need." Thomas looked down at his hands. "They are saying I could go to prison." "We will find you a good lawyer," I promised. "But Thomas, you need to understand something. I will support you through this process, but I cannot make it go away. Some consequences have to be faced." For the first time, Thomas nodded with genuine understanding. "I need help, Mom. Real help. For the gambling, I cannot stop on my own." Those words, difficult as they were to hear, represented the first step toward authentic healing. My son had finally hit rock bottom and was ready to climb back up. As Warren and I left the police station, he put his arm around me. "You did good in there. You offered love without bailout support, without enabling." "He needs professional help," I said. "More than I can give him." Warren nodded. "And that is the most important realization both of you have made." 3 months passed, bringing changes I could never have imagined during that awful dinner. Thomas, with the help of a lawyer Warren recommended, had entered a plea agreement for the embezzlement charges. Because he was a first-time offender, and the amount was relatively small by corporate standards, he received probation rather than jail time contingent on making full restitution and completing both community service and addiction treatment. The gambling addiction program Thomas entered was intensive. 3 meetings weekly plus one-on-one counseling. I attended family sessions once a month, where we worked through decades of unhealthy patterns under the guidance of Dr. Levine, a therapist specializing in addiction and family dynamics. Ruth, Dr. Levine said during one session, "Thomas needed to establish his identity separate from you, but he never learned how. Instead of independence, he developed dependence disguised as entitlement." Thomas nodded, the self-awareness in his eyes, still new but growing stronger. "I resented Mom for sacrificing everything for me, then resented her more when she finally started living for herself. That is pretty messed up." "It is a common pattern in families with enmeshment issues," Dr. Levine explained. "Breaking it requires both parties to change." Those therapy sessions were often painful, excavating years of dysfunctional dynamics we had both participated in. I had to acknowledge my role, how my overprotection and constant rescuing had stunted Thomas's development. He, in turn, had to recognize how he had exploited my maternal guilt and willingness to sacrifice. One Tuesday afternoon, Warren surprised us all by showing up at Thomas's individual therapy session. He had asked Dr. Levine's permission in advance, wanting to speak with Thomas privately. I waited nervously in the car, wondering what they could be discussing. When they emerged an hour later, both men seemed lighter somehow. Thomas actually smiled at Warren, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "What did you talk about?" I asked Warren on the drive home. "Man stuff." Warren replied with a wink. Later, he told me he had shared his own struggles with Thomas, how he had nearly lost his accounting practice years ago due to alcoholism before getting sober. Sometimes it helps to know you are not the only one who has made serious mistakes, Warren explained. Thomas's road to recovery included 100 hours of community service at a local homeless shelter. Initially resentful of the requirement, he gradually found meaning in helping others who had hit their own rock bottom. Through connections at the shelter, he found work as an administrative assistant at a local nonprofit, a significant step down from his marketing career, but a fresh start with people who knew his story and were willing to give him a chance. After 6 weeks of sleeping on a cot at the shelter, Thomas moved into a modest studio apartment in a less trendy part of town. It was small and plain, but he paid the rent himself from his new salary. The pride in his voice when he told me about signing the lease was something I had never heard before. The satisfaction of genuine earned achievement. Warren and I helped him furnish the place with basics from thrift stores. As we arranged the second-hand furniture in Thomas's new apartment, there was an ease between the three of us that had never existed before. Warren taught Thomas how to fix a leaky faucet, and Thomas actually listened, asking questions instead of pretending he already knew everything. That evening, we had dinner together in Thomas's apartment. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti he prepared himself. It was our first meal together since that disastrous night months earlier. The contrast could not have been more stark. Where tension had once filled the air, there was now tentative peace. Where harsh words had been spoken, there was now thoughtful conversation. After dinner, Thomas disappeared into his bedroom and returned with a small, oddly shaped package wrapped in newspaper. "I made this in art therapy," he said, handing it to me shyly. "It is not very good, but I wanted you to have it." I unwrapped a clay figure of a woman gardening, crudely formed, but clearly made with care. "It is you," Thomas explained unnecessarily. "Doing what you love, what you always loved, even when you did not have time for it, because you were too busy taking care of me." Tears filled my eyes as I held the lumpy sculpture. It represented something precious. Thomas seeing me as a person with my own passions and identity, not just as his mother. "Thank you," I whispered. "I will treasure it always." As the weeks passed, my heart condition stabilized. Dr. Matthews noted the improvement during my checkup, commenting that emotional stress reduction had likely contributed to my better readings. "Whatever changes you have made in your life, keep making them," she advised. One evening, as Warren and I sat in our garden, Thomas stopped by unexpectedly. He had been 9 weeks sober, attending his gambling recovery meetings faithfully, and working with a financial counselor to create a repayment plan for his debts. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said, sitting across from us. "To both of you." Warren looked surprised. "For what?" "For not giving me that money when I demanded it," Thomas replied. "For letting me hit bottom instead of cushioning the fall again. I needed that, even though I hated you for it at the time." The simple acknowledgement brought tears to my eyes. Thomas reached over and took my hand, then extended his other hand to Warren, who accepted it with evident emotion. "You two taught me what tough love really means," Thomas continued. "And it saved my life. I would still be gambling, still hiding, still running from my problems if you had bailed me out again." As the sun set over our garden, the three of us sat together in a moment of hard-won peace. Our relationship had been transformed through fire, emerging stronger, but fundamentally different. I was no longer just Thomas's safety net, and he was no longer my sole purpose in life. We were two adults with separate lives, but genuine love between us. The journey had been painful beyond words. The night Thomas called me a loser had broken my heart, but through that breaking came the possibility of something healthier. Sometimes, the most loving thing a parent can do is to step back and let their child face the consequences of their actions. Sometimes, true healing can only begin at rock bottom. As we sat in the gathering twilight, I realized my heart felt lighter than it had in years. The constant anxiety of waiting for Thomas's next crisis had lifted. The guilt I had carried for enjoying my life with Warren had dissolved. I was free to be myself, not just a mother, but a whole person with dreams, needs, and a life of my own. And in that freedom, I had given Thomas the greatest gift of all, the chance to grow up at last into the man he was always capable of becoming. Have you ever had to practice tough love with someone you care about? How did you find the strength to stand firm when it hurt so much to see them struggle? I would love to read your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of family healing and transformation. And if you know someone who might be struggling with enabling a loved one, please share this video with them. Sometimes, knowing we are not alone in these difficult journeys is the greatest comfort of all. Thank you for listening to my story today. And remember, sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most beautiful healing.